Hey guys, Marstaken here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so, we got some very big news today from the JP side of the game. It's kind of funny that we talked about these units on and off for years. And in fact, I think we most recently were talking about them on a stream that honestly was, what, like a few days ago maybe? And that is that the 50% type supports are going to be making a return to the game finally. I think the last time they were even on like their type banners, the last time they returned was potentially over a year. Was it over a year or even 2 years ago at this point? So these guys have not been around for a while. They are some of the rarer units in the game because they very often dropped these type banners at times when loads of other crazy stuff was happening in the game and people didn't want to waste stones on a different banner. So I know there are a lot of people out there, especially if you are a newer player, because the banners would have been around so rarely, won't have any of these guys, or if you do have them, you have one or two. But when these guys came out, they were really good, and obviously when they got their TUR awakenings, they were pretty useful for that period of the game as well. But they got aged out as soon as content started to get a little bit more difficult. I mean, by the time the first red zone came out for like the 7th anniversary, or the first set of stages I should say, they were already way too outdated to be usable. So something that we've waited to see for a long time is these guys getting an EZA. And one of the things that we've speculated about for quite some time is if they were to EZA them, what would they do? Because we're way past the days of the mono-typing meta now. We don't get teams where, you know, you build a full team of one type of character outside really of like Battlefield nowadays, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Now, we do have our boy Toon posted some Google Translate level translations for Gohan. And unfortunately with Google Translate, it obviously translates the actual words from Japanese to English as best as possible, but just as best as possible from Japanese to English, not in the terms of like the words that Dokkan actually uses, right? So we're going to go through the details here. Now, all of the 50% support units in the game at the moment, they all basically have the exact same passive. The only thing that is different about them is their super attack effects. So until the translations are properly out for all of the characters, we don't know exactly what the differences will be of their super attack effects. I mean, they're all up in Japanese, so you can see them on like the various Dokkan info and wiki sites. But for the most part, their passives are the same. So Z-Sword Gohan, for example, is the super physical one. He has greatly raised attack, immense damage, and high chance to stun. So the fact that they're going to have immense damage post EZA is obviously very, very good. And then, yeah, Gohan having greatly raised attack and chance to stun is interesting enough. So the passive, this is the most important thing. And this is where we can see the first buff comes into play here straight away. Physical types get 3 ki, attack and defense 10%. And then super physical gets an extra 50% attack and defense. Now, the way these units worked before, because we always called them like the 50% supports, is they would give all physical types 3 ki, but then that's it, and then would give the super physical types 50%. So obviously like Super Boo, who is the extreme physical equivalent, he was giving physical types 3 ki as well, but only giving the 50% to extreme types. Whereas now, these units, it seems, are giving the 3 ki and 10% attack and defense, as well as then giving the 50% extra to the units of their specific typing. So what that means is that this guy, or all of them, they're giving their own specific typing. So Gohan, for the example, super physical, 3 ki and 60% attack and defense, which is crazy. You think of some of the big, like crazy hard-hitting super physical characters, and then imagine this guy on rotation with them. 60% attack and defense support. It's pretty crazy. So they still change orbs. They've done that previously, right? Changes a random type of orbs other than physical into physical. And then own attack and defense by 50% for each key sphere obtained. I mean, 50% per orb is a lot for a nuking style unit. So that is pretty good. And then we also get attack and defense increased by 20% for each physical orb obtained. And chance to crit 10%. So the 50% per orb is per any orb. And then it seems like they're also getting an extra 20% if it's the same type orb, as well as getting 10% crit chance That's something that maybe could be different for each one, right? The fact that he has crit chance, maybe that's something that changes with each of the units. But like, that means he's getting 70% per physical orb and is creating physical orbs. So that is pretty crazy. Because remember, for these guys, for the most part, you're going to be using them as floating slot 3 support units. So as long as their post-super defense is decent, that should be pretty good for them. And then if your team has 2 or more super allies besides yourself, so another 2 superclass allies, change all key spheres to physical once only when HP is below 50%. So that's pretty crazy. If you start the turn below 50% HP, you make the entire field physical orbs. And then if there are 3 or more physical allies on the team, guard for the first 4 turns. So that is also pretty good, because depending on the teams that you're going to build, like with this Gohan, you imagine something like Goku Family or Bond of Parent and Child and something like that. And then you've got characters like God Goku, Beast Gohan, Bond of Parent and Child, you've got like the physical 8-year Boo Boys. Like, very, very easy to build teams that you would use this guy on, where you're going to have 3 or more physical allies. Because, I mean, for the most part, you're going to want to run him on teams where there are physical allies anyway, because obviously he's, giving the majority of his support to physical allies. But, I mean, guard for the first 4 turns is definitely very good. He doesn't have defense raise on super, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, one thing that somebody posted under this original post, I think these are the super attack effects for some of the other characters. It doesn't show all of them, but he's saying Kabe and Vegeta greatly stack attack and defense for 9 turns. That's really, really good. Because greatly raise obviously is 50%, and if it's for 9 turns, it means you can get multiple buffs of that if they do additional supers, which is really, really good. Cell stacks defense, so that's interesting. Unfortunately, in the current meta, like, stackers take a bit too long to get to the point where they are going to be defensively viable, especially if they're tech. But Super Boo recovers 20% HP on super, which is actually pretty crazy. I'm just looking at the I'm bringing him up here to see what the old one was. It was 18%, which is already quite a lot, but 20% posted. I mean, 20%, you think about some of the big villain teams now and how much HP we're actually getting on some of these teams. I mean, nowadays we're seeing teams that crack 700k, but even if you've got a team that has, say, 600k HP, right? 20% of that is 120k, which means he's just healing 120,000 HP on super. And if you get an additional super, then he's doing it again. So that seems really good. Now, the one thing that's interesting here is I was waiting to see if we had any interesting or any information about the Extreme Z battle, but there is an update in the news. It seems like it's going to be an Extreme Z area. So that's very interesting, because obviously normally we see these for free-to-play units almost exclusively. So very, very strange to see an Extreme Z area for these summonable units, but, it is what it is. So summonable units, but with an Extreme Z area. The type banners are coming back, but the biggest thing that will remain to be seen about this is, like, if the type banners are coming back just for this specific celebration, so because they're getting their EZA, that obviously ties in. But what happens after that? Like, when this celebration ends, what's going to happen then, right? Like, how do you get these units? Because something that people have been saying for a long time is that these units should go into the general pool because they're so difficult to get. And so if they are now getting an EZA as well, there's still going to be plenty of people out there that are in the position where they don't have these units. Now, at the moment on JP, it's a really rough time, right? Because you've got the New Year's Dual Dokkan Fest that people will have potentially summoned for Goku and Hirudegarn. And even if you haven't summoned for them, like, of course, the anniversary itself is going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. So are you really going to want to drop a bunch of stones on these type banners to try and pull these supports, who, let's be honest, even if they are really good, they are kind of niche because they're supporting, specific units on the team to the full potential and not everyone on the team. So hopefully they will either go into the general pool or they'll do something like, I feel like what they should do is the type support banners should just be up all the time, right? Like, imagine if it was based on the days like we have now. So on Monday, when all the AGL events are out, the AGL type banner is just out, like, every Monday. And then if people did want to summon, if there was like a dead week in the game, and people got some stones saved up, maybe they'd drop a summon or two on the type banner. And that could be quite useful over time to do a few summons on that banner and maybe get some of the units. But if they just go back to the way they've always done it before, where this, you know, these banners come back for this celebration and then they go away and these guys are not in the general pool, they're going to get their EZA'S and there's still going to be a large percentage of the player base out there that just don't have them, or at least don't have all of them. So I think that's very odd, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Are you excited about this? I mean, I do have all of the 50% supports, but I pretty much only have most of them at 55%. I think Kabe and Hit are the only ones that I actually have dupes for. So it'll be very interesting to see how they handle this and how they're going to look in the game. There are certainly some interesting things here, right? Like physical LR Boo Tanks will get his EZA at some point, and then him having a Boo partner that is a 60% support is pretty crazy. Rildo on the team for GT bosses with the LR Omega, giving LR Omega 60% support. That's pretty crazy. Super STR for Kabe, if you think about things like pure Saiyan builds. So we've got like the GT duo, the Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta that will fuse into Vegito, that will be getting their EZA. They're both on the Super Saiyans team as well. Hit, there's not so much. I mean, I guess Extreme STR, his biggest partner was always like the God Goku and Hit because of their links, but Extreme STR has some hard hitters. TN, Super Tech, I mean, Super Tech, there's a lot of very strong units as well, although they don't all necessarily share the most categories. Cell, Extreme Tech, imagine LR Fusion Zamasu with a 60% support unit on rotation. And then Super In. Super In is probably one of the weaker teams, especially because we've got some of the characters like Super Saiyans with the new LR that this Gohan wouldn't be on their team. And then Extreme In for Vegeta, I feel like is probably one of the ones with not as many setups. I mean, he is on Terrifying Conquerors, so he does match up with some of the other Extreme In units. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Which one do you think would be the best? Which ones do you have, if you actually have any of them? Let me know all your thoughts about the 50% units getting their EZAs down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.